I'm Claire Richardson. Thank you very much for joining us. Russia is stepping up its response to a Ukrainian incursion, vowing a tough reaction to the offensive on its own soil. Russia's defense ministry released these images of what it says are strikes on a Ukrainian tank and a drone in the western Kursk region. The Russian army says it also repelled attacks near 2 villages. Meanwhile, Russian state media reporting more than 76,000 people have been evacuated from border areas. With the incursion now into its 6th day, the local governor says more than a dozen people were injured after Ukrainian drones and missiles were shot down over the Kursk region. For more on this story, let's bring in Marina Miron at the War Studies Department at King's College London. Welcome back, Marina. As things stand now, how long do you think Ukrainian troops will be able to hold on within Russian territory?
Good evening, Claire. Well, that's a good question because it depends on how fast the Russians can get the reserves to the area. It seems that the operational tempo has slowed, and the Ukrainian forces are now focusing on Sudzha. They are trying to cut off the city from the south, but there are also Ukrainian troops in the north and to a lesser extent on Koronevo. That being said, the Russians are also using a lot of air power and dropping FABs, specifically on the Sumy region, to make sure that the Ukrainians have difficulty sending in reinforcements. That being said, I would say that it will take maybe a couple of weeks at least for the situation to stabilize. So this operation is far from being over.
And talk us through what you think Ukraine's strategy is here in Kursk. Could this be a push to take more land to strengthen Ukraine's hand going into possible peace negotiations, in November, as some analysts have suggested?
Well, there are many reasons for this offensive, and we have more operational tactical level reasons, and we have strategic and then political reasons. And yes, one of the political effects that is expected if the Ukrainian forces can hold that territory, that will strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position vis-à-vis Russia, even if Ukraine has to sacrifice troops in a sense that troops are needed elsewhere along the line of contact, meaning in Ukraine where the Russian forces are pushing. In operational terms, they also want to have a psychological impact, and not just on the Russian population and the Russian military command, but also on the Ukrainian population, to show that the Ukrainian armed forces are still very capable of conducting offensive actions despite the setbacks that we have seen in the past months. So there are many aims, and of course they want to stretch the Russian resources. So the idea was to relieve some pressure and repeat what the Russians did with their Kharkiv offensive. If we recall, Ukrainian troops had to be sent into Kharkiv to stop the Russian offensive. So it is something similar. So they're mirroring this operational concept that the Russians have used.
And so do you think this will offer the much needed boost to morale for Ukraine?
I think for now, of course, Ukraine has returned to the world media, showing the kind of the successful breakthrough in the Kursk region right under the general staff's nose. So it's a huge slap for Russia in the information space. I think it has already been a victory for Ukraine. In military terms, we don't know how that will play out, if this operational success can be translated into the desired strategic effect, the effect that Ukraine is seeking to gain, or will it push the Russians even further in terms of volunteering to fight for their fatherland. And that is the effect that Ukraine doesn't necessarily want.
Well, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. That is Marina Miron at the War Studies Department at King's College London.
Thank you for having me.